Right. We have a good attendance today. Let's give it a few moments. We'll start at 12:01. Um, all right. Hmm. All right, and it's 12:01. So, welcome to the EJF Board Learning Series. I am your host, Sarah Keller. I'm the Director of Community Management at EJF Real Estate. Today, I have the pleasure of introducing two of my colleagues, Leighton Wilson, Pod Leader, and Steve Rill, Associate Director of Community Management. This session is being recorded. We will circulate a copy of this recording to all board members after the webinar. We will leave time at the end for a Q&A where we will take questions from the chat. Today, we are here to communicate about communication. Communication is the foundation of all relationships. Board to membership, membership to board, board to management company, etc. Communication impacts us all every day in everything that we do as people on this planet. So let's break this down. What is communication? Communication is the process of exchanging information, ideas, thoughts, or feelings between individuals or groups. And yes, that is a dictionary definition of communication. But we're not stopping just there. Effective communication involves not just sending a message, but ensuring that it is received and understood as intended. I will now pass things over to Steve. Steve, take it away.
Welcome, everybody. The next slide is the importance of communication. Effective communication is vital in community association as it builds trust and fosters collaboration, ultimately leading to a more vibrant and engaged community. Effective communication is the cornerstone of successful associations. It fosters trust and transparency, minimizes misunderstanding and conflicts, and promotes active engagement and participation among members. Clear, thoughtful communication ensures that all stakeholders, owners, and residents feel informed, they are respected, and they are heard.
All right.
Some key principles. Clarity in communication ensures that the messages are understood, reducing confusion. Use simple language and avoid jargon, and be direct to promote effective conversation with community associations. Practicing empathy fosters stronger connections, understanding others' perspectives, helps in addressing concerns, and building trust, which is essential for thriving communities. And some things that I have when communicating with an association, clarity and concise are essential. Don't ever assume that someone thinks like you. Never presuming others share your perspective. Instead, articulate each point thoroughly, considering what information you would need if you were receiving it on your end. For complex and detailed messaging, consider drafting your communication, letting it sit, and then revisiting it before sending it. This reflects the process, often reveals areas for refinement, and ensures your message is well structured and coherent. Empathy is another vital component. Listening alternatively and responding with honesty builds mutual respect. While it's not always necessary to apologize, acknowledging someone's frustration can go a long way. Don't always be so quick to say that you're sorry for something if something is emailed or whatnot, because realistically, you may not be sorry about that situation. Recognizing and just saying, oh, I understand how this could be frustrating, but the rules and the regulations and the fine policies are in there, and the structure is set so that there's fairness and consistency for all owners. As a board member, we create these rules and regulations, and we use governing docs to really govern the property and the associations. And we're not sorry that they are there. We use those, but we can empathize with someone and understand why they may be frustrated for getting a fine or maybe not understanding what the true rule and regulation is. And we lean on those for consistency and fairness because, again, all owners have an ownership of this association, but they are there to create fair guidance within the property.
All right, not to go on a bit of a tangent about rules and regulations and policies for associations, but when individuals decide to purchase within a community, they receive that information. But also, when they're purchasing a community or they're purchasing in a community, they're going through one of the most stressful things that a human does, which is move most of the time or make a large real estate purchase. So, when you put all of your resale packet together, the full declarations, bylaws, um, plots and plans, policies, house rules, that can be easily over 100 pages. I know some associations that have over 100-page rules and regulations or board handbooks. And I'm sorry, resident handbooks. These are typically larger communities. So sometimes that information get lost, which is why people get caught off guard, but there are rules for a reason.
Yeah.
All right.
One other thing I would add, it is much easier to change your rules and regulations than it is to amend your bylaws. Your bylaw amendments take 2/3 of ownership to change, where rules and regulations really rely on the board. They can change while boards come and go, while members move and whatnot. You can edit rules and regulations. And I would really encourage board members, if A, you don't have rules and regulations, work on them. You can speak to your community managers. They can send you some examples from other properties so you can see. Update your fine structures. Look at what you can fine for certain things. Make sure you compare them with your bylaws. And any kind of edits that you may do with anything for governing docs, bylaws, rules, and regulations, please run them by legal counsel. They will catch things that you may not catch or your managing agent may not. And so it's very important.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks, Steve.
Mhm.
Moving right along.
Okay. Impactful meetings. These are really an important thing, right? Because when you do board meetings, that is where the homeowners or shareholders really see what you're doing. And some of these aren't done monthly, they may be done quarterly at your associations. So structure board meetings, community engagement via town halls, annual meetings, professional conduct and respect, effective meeting management. So when you are doing these meetings, annuals, town halls, or your board meetings, make sure that you are preparing them. Meetings should be conducted with professionalism, impartiality, and respect. Avoid letting emotions dictate your responses. Instead, rely on your governing documents to guide decisions and maintain neutrality. Structure and adherence to the agenda are key to effective leadership. This builds trust and demonstrates that the association is being run responsibly. Include an open forum in each meeting, allowing owners to speak, but limit each speaker to 3 to 5 minutes to ensure participation for all. If a member becomes upset or disruptive, the board should intervene calmly. Homeownership is a deeply personal and emotional and may run high when individuals feel unheard. All discussions must remain constructive and free of inappropriate language. If necessary, or if you have a homeowner that is like that, suggest a follow-up meeting to address concerns privately. Often, people simply just need to feel heard and let their frustration out. So don't let someone hijack your meeting. Make sure that everyone is aware of the time before you open your open session. And one thing that, we'll see, and I think Sarah may have this, try to move your open forum towards the end, because if you have it in the beginning, they may bring up items that you already have on your agenda. And that's where moving those things through may be able to cut down on this open forum. And, this is a volunteer position for all board members. And this is also time where owners are coming. So being respectful of everyone's time is very important on these things.
A good board meeting should not last more than 2 hours. Typically an hour. It's reporting out, talking about whatever the hot topics are for the association, committee reports, and then Q&A at the end. And having a timed agenda also helps, but sticking to those times, being like, okay, we're only going to talk about approving the minutes for 2 minutes. Everyone had the meeting minutes. They were sent out in advance, the draft ones from last time. People were given an opportunity to comment, just roll through the business. And the quicker you get that done, typically, as Steve said, it's respectful of people's time. Also, most of the time, these meetings are happening in the evening, which people are tired. Like they're coming home from work to have this, or some people are even still at work while doing this. The other thing is town halls. I don't see town halls are an effective way for members to come together and to talk about a specific item. I typically see town halls being utilized when we are in the process of doing a bylaw amendment or a large project at a community. It's a way for owners to have more of a say, and it's more of a dialogue than a structured board meeting where business is being conducted. And I do encourage owners or associations when they're having these larger decisions to make time to have a town hall, because when you do that, then it's easier for owners to make informed decisions when they're voting. Do you have anything else to say before I move on?
Yeah, when it comes to town halls, what would also be really helpful for the board is to ask for questions ahead of the town hall. For example, if you have bylaw amendments and you're doing a town hall, have people submit your questions before. That way you have answers and they're ready. And that way you're using and utilizing the time properly and it's effective for everyone. Everyone is getting something out, but then they hear what their questions are. You can address it, and then you can actually have a good vote that is really factual and really helping propel the association forward. And that is what our jobs are, is to make sure you're propelling your association forward. That's it.
Yeah. I mean, the whole asking for the questions in advance so you can research, but then also answering them publicly, because that person had those questions, then most likely somebody else has the same questions. All right.
All right. Good afternoon, everyone. Today, I'd like to start by walking you through the role of committees in our communities, why they're valuable, how they function, and how they connect with the board of directors. Committees aren't just support groups. They're an essential part of effective governance. I'm going to highlight three major benefits of committees. First, starting with they enhance engagement and participation. Committees invite homeowners to contribute ideas, share perspectives, and become active in shaping the community. This participation builds pride and ownership, and it strengthens support of the board's initiatives. Second, they provide focused expertise. Many residents have professional skills and personal passions in areas such as finance, landscaping, or social planning. Committees give these skills a platform. By conducting research and narrowing options, committees help the board save time and make more informed decisions. Third, committees improve communication. They act as a bridge between the board and the residents, translating board direction into action while also carrying community feedback back to leadership. This flow of information fosters transparency and ensures the decisions reflect needs and priorities of the community as a whole. And understanding committees and how they work. Committees are advisory bodies created by the board to focus on specific areas. Their role is not to make final decisions, but to research issues, gather input, and present recommendations. In this way, committees expand opportunities for homeowners to be directly involved while providing the board with valuable data and well thought out suggestions. They serve as a working arm of the association, allowing the board to focus on oversight and final approvals.
Remember that as a board member, you're a volunteer. You have probably most likely another job. So don't let the pressure of running the association fall on everybody, on just the board alone. It is effective to make these committees to make sure that everyone is involved. And it also helps you spreading out things to committees and items like that help and take some pressure off you. And it also gets input. Some people are always scared to run for a board because they feel I can't do everything. I can't be involved on this. That's fine. Why don't you? I know that you have a real excellency of landscaping because I feel like that kind of works with your job. We have a committee for that. Why don't you join the committee? And that way you can really concentrate on something you really enjoy and you can put some input. That takes that off the board and moves that over to a committee that can be really helpful and really empower other owners. I think that's a really important thing for board members to take away on that.
Absolutely, Steve. And just to piggyback, if we have homeowners that are very vocal about deficiencies in the community or things that they would like to see, putting that onus back on the homeowner in a meeting, in an open session, to create a committee and maybe foster relationships with other homeowners to hone in on one issue for the greater good of the community is also beneficial.
Yeah, use their power for good is what I like to say.
Everybody has something to say. So then just say, yes, that's great. How about we create a committee and you can say as much as you'd like about this and let's get it turned around, right?
Absolutely.
I feel like a lot of boards get overwhelmed and, you know, we need to make sure and empower the owners. And again, remember, as a committee, they don't have like they can't do things. They have to come back to the board and get them approved, right? So enabling them to work on a committee helps them, but allows them to bring their thoughts. Doesn't mean they're going to get everything, right? But it allows you to take some pressure off you and spread it evenly throughout the association.
Absolutely. So that actually brings me into the roles of the board and oversight of said committees. To your point, Steve, even though committees play an important role, they operate under the authority of the board. Boards define each committee's purpose and scope, assign tasks, and set boundaries. A board liaison is typically appointed to maintain direct communication and ensure alignment. Oversight also means receiving regular reports from committees. This helps the board track progress, address challenges, and maintain accountability. The board's role is to provide direction and structure, ensuring that the committee work supports the association overall goal without overstepping authority. And next, we have our committee responsibilities. Committees have very clear responsibilities. They must stay within the scope assigned by the board. They are expected to research issues, evaluate options, and recommend solutions. They should report their findings regularly to ensure transparency and alignment. Committees should also remember that their work represents the interests of the entire community and not just individual members. And finally, committees must respect boundaries. They do not sign contracts, they do not commit association funds, and these responsibilities lie with the board of directors.
And since we're talking about effective communication, when boards are setting up these committees, go over all of that up front. Spell out what it means to be on the committee. Let them know that, what the responsibility is. Let them know that you are doing X, Y, and Z. That doesn't mean that you have carte blanche and can do whatever, right? Make sure they know what lane they're driving in before they start. That will help everything move smoothly and really make sure that everyone understands without assuming that they have read things, but give them and lay that out, lay the track work for the train to run on that smoothly.
Absolutely.
Reduce the friction in advance.
And our next slide actually highlights the do's and don'ts of these committees. There are best practices to highlight. First, engage the community broadly. Committees should use multiple platforms, such as surveys, forums, events, and other tools to reach a wide range of residents and ensure diverse input. Second, every committee should have a board liaison. This direct link between the committee and the board and management ensures efforts remain aligned, relevant, and accountable.
I have a
There-
perfect example of
Sure.
this. I have a buildings and grounds committee at an association, and during an open board meeting a few months ago, a homeowner raised questions about packages and concerns about packages being delivered to the community. And the board chatted about it. We had a whole dialogue during the Q&A section, and it was delegated to the Building and Grounds Committee in order to find a solution possibly for this. And the Buildings and Grounds Committee determined the best thing would be to have owners who want to place signs on their back gates. This is kind of like a townhouse style community. But as you all know, when you're adding things to the exterior of properties, you want to ensure there's a certain uniformity. So they came up with these cute little signs, and the association doesn't want to have everybody install them at the association's expense, but those that feel necessary can opt in. So currently, the buildings and ground, they sent out mock-ups to everybody, getting input. And we're about to do a survey to see who's interested in possibly getting these signs in order to meet the minimum threshold in order to order and have these signs produced. So there's, the surveys and the polls really do help. And this is a perfect example of, a common issue being raised and it being delegated out and then supported while the board works and focuses on coding all the balconies for this particular association and other business that we have to attend to.
Absolutely.
Mhm.
And while there are a number of, dues, so to speak, we also, on the other hand, have some boundaries that these committees must not cross. Committees should never sign contracts. That authority rests solely with the board and protects the association from legal and financial risk. Committees must also not commit community funds without board approval. All spending decisions belong to the board to ensure financial responsibility and lessen legal exposure. And our next slide will highlight for us committee communication with the board. It ensures a direct line of communication between committee, board, and management, prevents miscommunication and scope creep, helps maintain accountability and align the board with priorities. In summary, committees strengthen engagement, bring forward expertise, and create vital channels of communication. They provide the board with informed recommendations while ensuring residents feel represented and involved. When committees, the board, management all work together in alignment, we achieve a stronger, more transparent, and more connected community.
Committees also kind of create just that home atmosphere because you're getting people involved that may not want to take on all the responsibility of the board, but want to do something that impacts the association. It also gets them to meet their neighbors, which is also pivotal, and it creates a lot of communication. People that get together will learn to know more about their association. And when they kind of join these committees, light bulbs start to go off, which then will encourage them to then become maybe future board members. And a lot of times we struggle with that. There are associations and homeowners associations where it is very hard to get board members. But creating committees will really foster into, hey, you worked on this committee and you were really good at this. Would you want to join the board? Maybe you could be at an at-large position that doesn't require much, but it leads into that conversation. And a lot of these committees help foster conversations with people that you, the board, or others may not have ever met. And then it creates this home atmosphere. And that is why people buy into associations, right? You're buying into a multi-dwelling and you should get to know your neighbors. It is very important.
And oftentimes we find ourselves, as homeowners and board members, we don't understand how much work goes into the decision making. Being a part of a committee really does give you firsthand experience to understand how the board came to any specific decision, be it a budget decision, landscaping, or finance related decision. So, being present and reporting those findings back really does give you a firsthand experience and a dry run for being a board member if that's what you're interested in.
Yeah. And right now, as you all know, for a majority of associations, it is budget season. And so the treasurer, who is generally responsible for reviewing all the financial reports, reporting out on that during your regular board meetings, helping with the budget, it's a heavy lift. It's a lot of information to take into consideration. And the larger the association, the more GL line items you have, and the more questions are raised. So by having others come together and help the treasurer, which is the finance committee, with that in order to review it and answer questions for the homeowners and make decisions and have that sort of dialogue, is going to make it easier to have the board review it and for the association to eventually approve it because it's been well thought out. Things have been bounced around, ideas have been shared about how to cut costs, or maybe we did a survey. I did a survey last year for an association because they have a package delivery. And they were like, well, if we get rid of the package delivery service we have, we're all going to save $20 a month. It's like, is it worth it? Is it worth it to you, the owners? And it was decided it was. But if it wasn't, then that's a direct, like, hey, we're going to cut down our expenses and decrease our increase that we would have been expecting. But that's a lot of work for the board to do when they're also trying to prepare for their annual meeting. They're trying to get a bunch of other things accomplished. So it's pretty much like divide and conquer in a way. That's how I see it. All right. Let's move along to tools and channels. So in the digital age, we have a variety of different platforms and ways to connect with each other. Board communication to the association outside of a meeting is done primarily via email sent from the manager to the association. This practice is, for the most part, a one-way communication pathway. On occasion, the manager may receive responses from that communication. They might have a bit of dialogue back and forth with that owner or that resident. They may direct the owner to the board for further information or encourage that individual to come to the next board meeting and ask those questions or request something. This path is considered an official channel of communication. Another critical channel that you all have is your online Vanica portal. As owners and as board members, this is where we house documents. Having information centrally located is a good way to keep people informed. The portal provides users with lots of information at their fingertips 24/7. So it's all the approved board meetings minutes are right there for somebody. If they're new or they missed something, they're able to review and become more knowledgeable. If you are currently not using your portal, or believe that ownership is missing out on this piece, ask your manager to do a demo at your next open board meeting on how it works. We're happy to do so. We encourage people to use it because it is a powerful tool, and the more information people have, the more informed they are, and therefore things typically go better. While all of this is helpful with mass communications, keep in mind keeping people informed. It doesn't provide owners with a way to engage directly with one another, or for a board to directly communicate back and forth with owners quickly. There are a few different digital platforms out there. Some are at no cost and others come with a price. So let's talk about the free ones first. I don't know about you, but I love free and I love saving money on that budget. So Social media platforms like Facebook, messaging apps like WhatsApp, email groups such as Google Group are all good options. They're options that I've seen for a variety of communities over the years. And then you have your commonly paid for versions, HOA space. It's cheap, but it takes a lot of upkeep and it is antiquated. It's hard to navigate and it's hard to upload things. It has a message board though, and it holds information and shares contact information with owners to owners. So it's a way for people to connect with one another. Building Link, this is a very powerful tool. It allows residents to share their contact information, allows forums and message boards, in addition to everything from package delivery, move reservations, maintenance requests. And I could keep going on because there's a lot that the software can use. And those of you that have it probably know what I'm talking about. But this is mostly used with high rises that have on-site staff, and it can be overkill as well as cost prohibitive for smaller associations. However, if you have a concierge, even if they're just there 9 to 5, and you don't currently use this, this is something that you should consider as it is very handy for package tracking. And we all know people care a lot about their packages. I know I do personally, getting it in my house. And most of you live in an urban area, so you know there are porch pirates out there that'll come by and take your packages out of your package room or your lobby or whatever, or it doesn't even get inside the building. So, anyways, I could have a whole webinar on packages, probably. All right. Online and email are not the only ways to connect. You have to keep in mind owners of who the owners are in the building. There are still people out there that do not use email. Sometimes the bulletin board in the laundry room is still the best place for engagement. Posting about parking space available for rent, asking people for recommendations on locksmith. Sometimes I even see inspirational quotes on bulletin boards. If it's a laundry room, there's typically at least one sock pinned to the board. Outgoing communication doesn't always have to be email either. You want to ensure that owners are receiving messages. Example, I have an association which has about 6 owners that still do not have email. And on occasion, I need to provide them with information quickly, and I cannot rely on snail mail. I'm sure as you guys have noticed, the mail has become increasingly unreliable, and it is not as fast as it used to be. So when that's not an option, instead we drop notices at their house, or I have a board member volunteer to slip it under their door. So when you consider adding a direct communication platform that does not have a filter or a moderator like a Google Group, a WhatsApp, or some social media platforms, things can get a bit heated. And people can say inappropriate things online. I'm sure this is not a surprise. I don't believe anyone on this call is a stranger to what could possibly happen in an uncontrolled online environment. As an association, if you're choosing to use these forums to regularly communicate with owners or residents, this becomes an official form of communication, which means you become responsible for what is being shared and said, unfortunately. Therefore, to protect yourself, you want to consider establishing a policy on what can be shared, what can't be, how members need to conduct themselves, and the repercussions for not doing so, which is pretty much booting them from that form of communication, or limiting it to where they can't respond. They can just read, but they can't respond back. Those are pretty extreme cases, but we can't have people saying slanderous things about others in a written public area. There has been some lawsuits in the past for associations that involved this, that allowed this to happen. So please consider that policy. And if you are not interested in having a direct way for residents to communicate with one another, that is your choice. However, I recommend for all associations that they have a civility policy, which would outline the conduct of which people need to act within a meeting of the community or at a community event or just within the community itself. While we are not trying to police everything, by adopting this type of policy, you are setting a standard, a tone as to what is important to your community and what you will not tolerate. This helps new residents and owners that come on board, but it also sets boundaries for the existing ones. The three of us have been managing associations for a long time now, at least over a decade. I'm not going to say how many years exactly, but anyways, we remember hosting meetings in person. Like that's how meetings were. That's how meetings happened. They were all in person in people's living rooms, in people's lobbies, rec rooms, at our management office, sometimes in churches, rec centers, etc. And during those meetings, the frequency of which somebody would have an outburst would be extremely inappropriate, bully others, was more infrequent than it is today, unfortunately. With the majority of meetings happening online, people not having to show their faces, make direct eye contact with groups, these types of things happen more often now. With all that being said, I urge you to consider putting a policy in place, even if you do not have a problem right now. It's always best to put a policy before it's an issue. And as always, if you need policy drafted, talk with your manager and seek your legal counsel. Do you guys have anything you want to add?
Just make sure that you're aware these are kind of different things. This is not something that your managing agent is going to kind of monitor. Sarah kind of touched that, right? Building Link, if you have site staff, they normally will run that, right? If you are using like a Facebook group or something like that, the board is monitoring that. And although we all have good intentions, somebody may read something that in a tone that it was not written in, but that is how they are perceiving it. And just make sure, that you are following, specific guidelines. Sarah is very right about creating policies and things because these items can be pulled into legal cases as well. And I don't say that to scare people, but you just have to be mindful of that. We have so much different communication that's coming at us left and right. So just make sure it's detailed, to the point, and just make sure that we are following those policies. It is very important that you set the lines of communication on what is approved, what is not, what people can say, and if something is said improperly, how it will be taken care of. And remember to have these reviewed often at meetings and things, because you may set this up and you may not ever you may set the policies up and 4 years may pass. 4 years, that's a lot of turnover of people coming and going through your association. So make sure you're touching those, maybe at the annual meeting and going over and, hey, we have this Facebook group. Let's run through the policies real quick, just to make sure everyone understands how we're using this and what it's used for. Just helpful hints on helping and making sure they stay positive.
Yeah. One thing that I find just helpful in general with meetings is not allowing a chat. I know that sounds crazy to some extent, but with chat, people are constantly, I've been in some meetings where it's just a stream of like back and forth chatter, which, I mean, we want people to engage each other, but then it distracts from the business that the board is trying to conduct. It's also, people are more loose with their language in those chats. So by having those boundaries, and if somebody wants to say something, they have to unmute themselves to like speak up. And it's less likely that they're going to say something that's inappropriate. Still in the realm of possibilities. I also encourage board members when they're communicating to have their cameras on. Because when you have your cameras on, it's not just people hearing you, it's people seeing you and picking up on social cue and verbal or nonverbal cues, right? Your body language, they're seeing your facial expressions, etc. We can't really force people in the meeting to go on camera, but you can encourage it. If they see that the board's on camera, then you're more likely to have owners come off camera when they're talking. So, and people are able to better understand what is being conveyed. All right. Well, now I will turn it over to Steve again. All right.
Now, here's the important one, right? As board members, we all want to collaborate with management. So, effective collaboration with your management company is essential for smooth operations. Establishing clear communication channels fosters understanding and ensures everyone is aligned with community goals. Setting expectations from the offset enhances partnership success, leading to improved community satisfaction and efficient problem solving. Your community association manager is a valuable resource. Don't hesitate to question and seek guidance. The board and management work collaboratively to advance the association's goal. You are a team and should both know what is going on, and they should know, just like in sports, as if you're running a play. In situations requiring specialized expertise, such as legal matters, consult a professional to protect the association's interests. For large projects, coordinate with your manager to schedule vendor meetings, and submit questions in advance. This ensures clarity, alignment before proposals are finalized. And so some of us, as Sarah has said, may have been in the game for a very long time. I know you're not thinking me because my beard is gray. I might have been here for a while or been managing for a long time. But we have a lot of knowledge and a lot of things have come across our desk. And this is where working together as a team really enhances the management and board styles of associations. For example, I may get an email and I will read an email from an owner and be like, this owner is going to sue the association. They didn't say it, but I can read that. So when I talk to the board, I will go over that email and say, hey, I read that email and let me tell you my thoughts on this. This person is thinking of their own individual and not of the association in whole. We need to get out in front of this because they will be suing us because I can read that. And we have this open dialogue and I'm like, yes, let me read why I think this. And they might not have said that verbally, but the subtext of that email is they want A, B, and C. And if they don't get it, legal action may be taken. And working with your agent, your community manager, and learning these things help protect the association. And that's where removing your emotions and looking at subtext and things as you get that as a board member is very important. And then leaning on that managing agent and being like, hey, and just talking, right? I'll talk to boards as if I'm talking to my friends because I'm invested in you as an association. I want you to propel your association forward and I want the best for you. So although I may have a great knowledge of putting in a retainer wall, I am not an engineer. So I'm going to say we really need to get an engineer out here to take a look at it. And these are some of the questions I think we should ask. A, B, and C. What are your inputs? And we collaborate, and that way we're ready when that engineer comes out and we talk about things. Next item, emergencies. We love when emergencies come because they come always at the time when things are, when you're just not expecting them, right? So first thing is make sure that you're calling our after hours line. Don't ever email an emergency. And please let all owners know that, right? Like owners should know to call the emergency line and not send emails. If your manager was nice enough and gave you their cell phone number, God bless you and the manager. But make sure you don't text that manager about an emergency. Call the emergency line that we provide, which is the main number. And the reason why is because it gets tracked. As soon as you call, it gets tracked and we go through and I take over the on-call items, meaning like I'm in charge of it. So I get all of the printouts on these. And so if there is an issue, I'll go back and take a look. But that's the first thing. So anything after hours, please make sure that you're looking and you're funneling those and making sure owners are calling the emergency line.
Yeah, it's not just that though, Steve. If you think about it, it's your manager could be hiking on a mountain on a weekend. They could be in a place that doesn't have cell reception, or they could just be asleep and their phone's on silent. So we always have a dedicated staff to receive phone calls 24/7. And emergencies are generally handled after after hours, um, get triaged up. So we have 5 layers of people that are able to help support communities in when emergencies happen. Because sometimes we get Hurricane Sandy blowing through the DMV, or we get derechos, and we can get lots of calls. So it's 5 layers of people it has to go through if the other lines are busy. Um, but that means that you always have somebody available. So like if, the first person's talking to somebody, then it goes to the next person, and then it goes to the next, and it'll eventually come to me. It'll go to Steve too, and
Yes.
Leighton. We're all a part of this triage tree, as needed, and we have it built out for a specific reason, and it's to ensure that our communities are being taken care of, regardless of what happens, um, either on an individual level or a city level or a state level.
And then also understanding your governing documents is critical when it comes to emergencies. Knowing what constitutes an association issue versus a unit issue and when the board involvement is appropriate. Educating owners and when to contact management or the board is important. For example, if the building loses power, check the street and see if that has power. If not, call Pepco. Check online and see if there's an outage on that. Don't call the emergency line. Check to see because, for example, we may not have anything to do with that, meaning the association does not. It falls under Pepco, right? In such cases, then you would post something on whatever your building communication is, right? Hey, everybody, I just wanted to let you know there's an outage in our area. There is no time on when it will be repaired. Should you have any questions, call Pepco directly. The more we call, the more they'll get calls and expedite that and send someone out. It's very important on that. And then also when I say know what the association, what the unit, like where that lies, that's important because it helps keep the cost down for associations, will help keep down increases, right? So for example, you might be on the board and get, hey, I have a leak and it's coming above and it's right above my tub. What do I do? Oh, well, have you spoken to your neighbor? It may be their drain line as it's right above yours and it's stacked right above. This would actually be a unit to unit matter and should be addressed directly with them. And the association's probably most likely not going to step in. And other items that I always encourage all of my associations to do, right? If somebody's going on a long-term vacation, tell them to shut their water valves off, right? They should also be checking them on a yearly basis to make sure they're working. Toilet, bathroom sink, kitchen sinks, right? We want to make sure they're working because most of the time people don't check them. The time you check them is when you have an emergency, and that's when you find out they're not working, right? Or, make sure they get to know their neighbors, right? Don't do it during an emergency. When you move in, make sure it's say, hey, you should go meet your neighbor next door on both sides, upstairs and below. Get their phone number, get an email, get something so when there is an emergency, you're not running around being like, I can't get a hold of this person. Be proactive in these kind of things. They really do help cut down on emergencies and costs to the association. And again, that's what we're here for. We're here to make sure we're helping the association, but by creating this community and getting people to learn who neighbors are and whatnot will help. And it'll help really take stress off the board and really make this an environment where everyone knows what's going on or how to step in, and then it doesn't always fall on the board.
And just to add to that, Steve, it is very important for residents to locate their shutoff valves and the important plumbing components inside their unit. If there is a trade-off of ownership, you could possibly consult with your agent or the previous homeowner to label and locate all of those important components inside your unit.
All right. Well, thank you, Stephen Layton, for joining us today and sharing your knowledge and perspective. All right, board members, drop your questions in the chat. This webinar, as you know, is being recorded. However, the recording will not display the chat or any of your names. You are able to put in anonymous questions if you choose to do so. And as a reminder, we'll be sharing these slides and the recording via email probably early next week. This information is being posted on our website and it is publicly available, and you can share with others as you wish. All right, so we already have some questions. Let me pop it open. All right, here's a good one. How can an association utilize committees in a small community where owners don't live on site?
Yeah, I'll take that one, Sarah. I think that virtual is always the best option. Platforms like Zoom or Teams or Google Groups, you can communicate directly with your neighbors. If someone is able to, take photos of areas of concern, that would be, another opportunity to share amongst folks that are remote owners. So really utilizing your technology is probably the best option.
Okay. Um, do you have a template to send to owners for what they would like to discuss during the annual meeting and also to form a committee? Of course, we will edit to our needs. I think that really depends on the size of the community. I find that larger communities aren't polling the entire association for topics for the annual meeting. I used to manage a lot of smaller associations that were 50 units and less, and those we would typically allow that, or we would just have a new business section. Like, what do you guys want to talk about today? When you have, a 12-unit building, it's more of a casual conversation than a formal Q&A at the end, for the most part. As for to form a committee, I would recommend that you chat with your community manager. I'm sure they have different documents that they can provide you with.
Yeah, and normally in an annual meeting, like your agenda is actually spelled out, right, in your bylaws or whatnot. But you
Mhm.
can say, hey, we're going to have this project that's coming up and we will be setting a committee up. If you are interested, please email. And then you can kind of learn on that, on how to set that up and then have discussions, or you could have a meeting for people to come to and discuss what you're going to be doing and what you're looking for that committee to do.
Yeah, that's a good point. But not all governing documents
Yeah,
have it written out exactly how an
not
agenda
all of
is
them.
done.
Yeah.
But they also allow space for a little bit of wiggle room and a little bit
Yeah.
of a dialogue, because annual meetings aren't necessarily like the board of direct, it's the community coming together annually to discuss, like, either approve their budget, elect a board.
Yeah.
Different types of annual meetings for different types of associations. I have this condo that I manage in DC that has an annual meeting for elections and then an annual meeting for budgets.
Yeah.
Both are in person and very interactive with the association, which has been very impactful for them. All right, this is also a good one. I'm the president of a townhouse in HOA, and I've been trying to get people to join various committees, but residents constantly say no because of a couple people who are currently on the board. Any suggestions to getting around that? So it sounds like there's some conflict of personalities here. Layton, you want to take it?
Sure, absolutely. So I think that this is when a liaison comes into play. If there is a board member that doesn't necessarily have the same contentious relationship with residents, that person can act as an intermediary and be the liaison between the committee and the board. So really utilizing the number of people that are on the board to kind of be a buffer between certain folks and the community. And that communication can be just with that person as opposed to the whole board of directors, and reporting can go through this one liaison.
Mhm. And I'd also like to say this is just general advice. We manage associations in DC, Maryland, and Virginia. So please see your state or city regulations for specific matters regarding conduct of meetings, as well as communication. A lot of these talking points have been generated via the official CAI communication course, which is an international course that I know I've taken, and I believe, Steve, didn't you take communication too?
I think so, yes.
Yeah. So these are just good general guidelines to things to keep in mind. All right. Does anybody else have any other questions that they would like to raise? We'll give it a few moments just in case. All right. Great. Well, thank you all for attending and taking the time out of your busy day to join us. We appreciate your commitment to your communities, and I'll see you next month. Thanks. Bye.
Hey, everybody. Thanks for joining.
Bye-bye.